Welcome to A Double
and
Dice
with your host Kim.
and Jocelyn.
Pour your favorite beverage,
Pull up a comfy chair.
because we are ready to roll.
Welcome to episode 71 of A Double and Dice. And today, and I was told I need to sing this as our topic for today. Rules. Ask your judge and not your dad. Did I get it right?
You missed half of it, but okay.
Oh wait, okay, sorry. Rules. Which are good, which are bad. Rules. Ask your judge and ask. No, wait. Ask your judge and not your dad.
You got it, Kim. You got it. I don't
wasn't
know
sure I
that
had to do
anyone
the
is.
whole thing.
Pardon?
I wasn't sure if I had to do the whole thing.
You have to do the whole thing. There's going to be like a grand total of one person that understands that.
Well, there you go. We're gonna find out.
I'm going to put money on it right now. If more than one person can tell us what we sort of borrowed that from, what I borrowed that from, because Kim didn't know what it was. I will send you some sort of no prize. So yeah, we're going to talk about rules today, Kim.
Yeah.
Are you excited?
Well, you know me and rules.
What about you and rules?
I don't like giving rules. Wait.
Like you don't like giving rulings?
Rulings. I don't like giving rulings because I always think everybody is wrong and I'm right. And because I would always say, the card says this, so they go by that. Which is not the thing usually, but
sometimes.
Yeah, I'm
but
not big
not
on the rules.
always.
But you're a rules lawyer, so
I mean, I don't think of
rules.
myself as a rules lawyer. I think of myself as someone who knows the rules sometimes. And certainly I don't have the level of expertise and background that some of the other established people who rule and judge have, having not played for as long, particularly at the competitive level. We've talked ad nauseum about, the games Rob and I used to play at the kitchen table that were 3 hours long before we started learning how to actually play the game. So, but I have taken quite an interest in the past couple of years, since before we started recording this podcast, in how the cards are worded and how that goes back to the rules and how you interpret cards and the rules and how those tie together, and then how different abilities interact when you have those rules and when they contradict and those types of things. So that's why you might recall, Kim, we did an entire series on the rules.
Yep.
In 2021. And we might have to do a new one because, as you have heard from this podcast and possibly others, is that there will be a new comprehensive rule book coming with the launch of Secret Wars, which is currently slated for Q4 2022. And guess what, Kim?
What?
We're in Q4 2022.
Yes. So there's still a few months to go.
There is still a possibility that Secret Wars is going to launch this year.
I should have said chicken butt when you said guess what, because now Noah says that all the time.
Guess what?
Oh yeah, he'll be, guess what, mommy? I'm like, what? He goes, chicken butt. I'm like, I like chicken wing. Okay, so we're tired today, so we're totally gonna derail everywhere now.
I mean, that's just what we do.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, so the rules, and I found that in my experience, and as we talked about when we did our rules series, is anytime there's a question about the rules, the first thing I do is I go to the rule book. And I go back to the rule book and figure out what it is that I'm looking at. Is it about a die? Is it about an ability? Is it about order of the attack step? Things like that. And I go back through the rules, and I can usually figure out from the rules what the answer is, or what I think the answer is, and then I can reach out to other people and get some verification. So,
and which rule book do you use currently? That's the best right now?
Currently, I'm using X-Men Forever. It's the most complete current-ish rulebook. And I say current-ish in that it's not currently a modern set, but you can get it from the Wizkids website. The Trouble in Waterdeep and WWE rulebooks are missing some significant portions of the rules. I think with WWE in particular, they took some stuff out because I think they were trying to attract new players to the game. So it was almost like a quick start rules.
Mm-hmm.
And the Trouble in Adventures in Waterdeep is the one I go to if the card happens to have a D&D theme to it. There is some stuff that's D&D specific in that rule book, but it misses things from other types of sets like Marvel and DC. So mostly it's X-Men Forever because there's not a lot of D&D being played right now, at least in current modern, because none of it is modern. And if a D&D question comes up, then I will go to Adventures in Trouble in Waterdeep, which is what I call it because I can't remember which one's the team pack and which one's the campaign box.
Trouble in Waterdeep is the campaign box.
There you go. And Adventures in Waterdeep is one of the team packs?
Yes.
I will buy that. Actually, I don't have to because I already own it.
Well, I'm looking at the box, so unless I'm blind.
I trust you, Kim. I trust you. So those are the rule books that I use. And then from secondary, if I can't come up with an answer, then I'll go to the win. So we say this a lot. The win is active. There's a ruling in the win. What does that mean, Kim? What is the win?
It's when you win something.
That's something. What is the win in the context of rules for Dice Masters?
Isn't it like Wizkids? I don't know what the I and N is supposed to actually mean.
Information network.
Yeah, there you go. Info network. Yeah.
Yeah. So on the Wizkids info network, which is where you can sign up for, you like to create an account and participate in events. There's also a section of that has rules, and there's a rules section for Dice Masters. There's one for HeroClix, and there's also one for Attackwing. So, the Dice Masters rules forum for quite some time was very quiet. We knew that people were submitting questions because people would talk about it on Facebook and on Discord, but like from 2020 pretty well onward, there wasn't any questions answered. I think there was a couple of questions answered possibly in 2021, and then it was quiet again for like a year. And then they started answering questions again in the spring. And then since August 27th, 2022, the Wizkids forum has been active for Dice Masters. Active, Kim. Active in that routinely they are answering questions that are being asked. Routinely, they are answering questions that are being asked not just about modern cards, but also about golden cards and other rules type interactions that have required clarity for some time. And they tend to come in a flurry at a time, like a bunch at once. Sometimes they make a rule and then they change it after they've reviewed it again, which is quite common. It happens in all kinds of games. And as recently as this morning, the day we're recording this podcast, there was a question that was answered. So, they're not going to answer everything for sure. But right now, because they're in the process of building this comprehensive rule book, I think the more questions that we ask in the Wizkids rules forum, in the win, the better it's going to be for us as players, because we're going to clear up, hopefully, many of the questionable interactions or things that people have debate over today. Will there be debate in future? Absolutely. There will absolutely be debate in future, but the more we can clear it up and get it into the comprehensive rules, the better it's going to be. So I'm going to take a page out of the HeroClix book, Kim, for a minute.
Oh, okay.
So HeroClix has been around for 20 years. Dice Masters has been around for a little bit less than 10. I think we're at 8 years right now. But HeroClix has this online comprehensive rulebook that answers many, many questions and many, many interactions. And they've gotten better at templating the HeroClix cards. They're still not perfect. HeroClix players will still say that their rules and cards are not written well and they're hard done by, but believe me, we're Dice Masters players. We know that they're doing just fine. But where was I going with this? HeroClix, comprehensive rulebook online. Right. So having that one source of the rules and the comprehensive interactions that it covers, in addition to the win for rules questions, has put HeroClix in a pretty good state. HeroClix is a very complex game. I would wager to say it's more complex than Dice Masters. I don't think it's better or worse. It's different, but it's very complex because of the levels of interactions between all the different powers and all the different types of powers. Because you've got speed powers and attack powers and defense powers and damage powers and
lots of powers,
range and all kinds of things, right? And then special powers and combinations of powers and how they interact with each other. It's quite complex. Dice Masters has that too, in that every card has some kind of power on it, and very few of them are keyworded, so everything is special and unique. But there's just something that's different about how the powers interact with Dice Masters. But this comprehensive rulebook should, in my mind, make it easier to explain a rule and have that backup to say this is why. And we're not referring to a ruling from 2014 in the Wizkids Information Network. You know?
I like how you're saying Information Network now.
Well, I'm not big on short forms, Kim. You might have heard this before. So acronyms are okay in places, but short forms can be challenging. So anyway, so that's what I'm hoping is going to happen.
Okay.
So as we said, so how many rulings have there been, Kim? We didn't count them, but we have an estimate.
No, we didn't. I can't count them if you like.
Yeah, but it's like 2.5 pages worth.
Yeah, so how much is on a page, right? Yeah.
So it's like 2.5 pages of rulings since August 27th and answering interaction questions. So we're not going to talk about all of them, but we will link it in the show notes, because if you are someone who's not familiar with the Wizkids Information Network, the WIN, and the blah, 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 the rules forum, then we'll provide you a link so you can go in and check it out.
Yes.
How's that counting going?
Counting is going.
Okay.
I think there's about 30 on a page, so could be close to 100, but I really doubt that. But I will count as you talk.
Okay. So I'm going to start with the end of a ruling that was posted on September 24th, which was just a few weeks ago. And this is an editor's note. I think this is a good place to start. So the editor's note says, "We greatly appreciate these follow-up questions." This is on a topic that had multiple follow-ups from the community asking further clarifications. "This enables us to clarify and solidify rule precedents that will ultimately be codified in the new rulebook, which is currently being constructed. Our intent is not to appear arbitrary, aloof, or abstract in these rulings. Our objective is to have a consistent and standard codification of the rules of Dice Masters through this iterative process, taking into consideration the future aspects of the game along with previous rulings and player insights. Positive and constructive input and feedback from the community is welcomed and does make a difference."
62.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
So 62 rules topics, right?
Yeah.
Because some of them have multiple comments on them.
Yes.
So 62 rules topics since August 27th. That's probably more than we had from 2018 onward. So until 2022 would be my guess, or 2019 anyway. So I like the fact that the Wizkids Rules Forum and the folks that are answering these questions are open to and willing and interested in hearing what the community has to say. They want to hear our feedback. They want to hear positive reinforcement. They want to hear constructive input on how things could be better. I like that a lot. Jimmy has come on this podcast specifically and called it not Dice Masters 2.0, right? So they've redesigned Dice Masters from the look and the feel, but he's made it very clear that this isn't like a complete rules overhaul and the game is still going to functionally play the same way it always has. What they are doing as the game has become more mature at this, 8 and 9 years of age that this game is, probably closer to 10, because although it didn't launch until 2014, I'm sure it was in development for a couple of years before that, is the game has evolved. How the game is played has evolved, the abilities have evolved, and because of that, they need to review how some things work.
Mm-hmm.
and they're welcoming our input for those of us that are aware of this rules forum and welcoming us to put our questions in there. So again, if you have a question, I encourage you to ask it in the rules forum now because they're building this new rule book. So there's a couple of rules that I want to specifically talk about today.
Okay.
But we're not going to talk about 62 topics, Kim.
Let's just pick out, the important ones.
So I want to start with the used pile. I know you don't like this one, Kim.
Always on top.
That's not the topic of the used pile. When a card says to go to the used pile, but there's a ruling that says out of play. And I asked this question, so it should be here. Here it is. Okay, so I asked this question on April 23rd, and it was answered on May 2nd. So this is before the most recent rush of rules, but I think it's an important clarification. So one thing that Dice Masters players love to disagree on, aside from the placement of the use pile on their mat, is card text supersedes rules text, right, Kim?
Always, or should.
So there is a rule in the rule book that says card text always supersedes basic rule text if two cards directly conflict. The one that says you can't beats the one that says you can. Also in the rule book, there is a rule that says out of play. This is a special area that is not represented on the playmat. When you spend energy during your turn or use an action die, it goes out of play until the end of the turn when it is moved to the use pile. Dice that are out of play cannot be interacted with by any game mechanics and will not be used to refill the bag if it runs out mid-turn. Unblocked attackers also go out of play, as well as any dice sent from the field or the reserve pool to the use pile during your turn. The out of play area does not exist during your opponent's turn. So the conflict here is between basic rules text, which says card text supersedes rules text, and to the use pile, which is card text. So it clearly says send a die to the use pile. There's a group of people that say this should supersede the rules text of out of play. Right?
I agree.
I understand that you agree. This is always a hot button debate. It's happened quite a lot. And quite frankly, I was surprised that the rules forum answered this question. I didn't think that they would. My interpretation of this was that the basic rules text as part of the fundamental rules of the game would send the die out of the play, even if the card said to the use pile. And the answer that they gave was yes, that is correct. And I think part of the piece here is that if you started playing before out of play existed and everything did just go to the use pile, you were used to that particular way of playing. That's what you were used to. And then this card text supersedes basic rule text would support that conversation. But then they came out with the Professor X Global, the original Professor X Global, which allowed you to ramp for days if you had masks. And that's when they introduced the rule of out of play. Right? So anyway, so the answer to this question was very clearly that I was correct in this particular question. That the dice sent to their owner's use pile during that player's turn generally still go out of play, even if a card says it would send that die to the use pile. There are some specific exceptions, just like there is to any rules text or card text, because that's what games do, is sometimes they break the rules. But it just says when the wording defaults to sending to the use pile, since the general rules tell you that what you should do if that happens, it goes out of the play, then that's what the rule is. So this is, in my mind, and whether I was right or wrong didn't matter. It just happened that I had the correct interpretation. This is a clear defining moment for me to say Wizkids wants to clear this up. Wizkids wants to make sure that everybody's on the same page. And then not long after that is when we found out that the new rule book was coming. So it was very interesting to me. Kim? Kim is quiet because she doesn't agree with this ruling.
No, I don't.
but it exists now, right? So it is very clearly stated that to the use pile means out of play if it's happening on your own turn. And this will hopefully, as previously mentioned in that post that I talked about a minute ago, be codified in the new rulebook that it's clearly stated that this is how the game works. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So, as we mentioned, flurry of rules questions happening, flurry of answers happening starting in August. And, there's a lot of stuff in here. And a lot of these things needed to be answered because some of the types of abilities had not previously interacted in a modern setting. So, for example, the concept of tokens and the actioned card mutation, right? So I don't know that previously mutation or its predecessor polymorph existed in a meta where tokens were being played the way they are today. So obviously when we talk about tokens, we're talking about things like Master Mold tokens. So Master Mold, when he's fielded, when he attacks, and when he's KO'd, he generates a Sentinel token. Tokens are level 1 character dice in the field zone. Mutation says that you take a character die from the field zone and swap it with a character die in that player's use pile. And that was a question that people weren't sure how to handle that. So yes, a token in the field is a level 1 character die. So it should be, in theory, a valid target for mutation. But when it leaves the field, it disappears. So can you still swap it for something that's in the use pile if it disappears? And the answer to that question was yes, you can. You can target the token when it's in the field zone. And when it removes from the field zone as part of this swap, it just ceases to exist. So it validated how the interpretation of things like tokens versus intimidate had happened for many years since we had intimidate introduced as a keyword.
Right.
In whatever set that was.
I have no idea.
The biggest, most popular one was probably the Trouble in Waterdeep, right? With the gazer.
Right, yep.
But I think intimidate was introduced prior to that. So, it said that tokens can't exist outside of the field zone. So if they can't exist outside of the field zone, when you intimidate them out of play, in theory, they would cease to exist. And this this mutation ruling, supported that. Right?
Mm-hmm.
There was questions around Villainous Pact. Villainous Pact is a basic action card that has existed since a long time. It's been reprinted a number of times. And this question, looking at it now, in hindsight, after the 2022 U.S. Nationals and World Championships, that was asked by General Nemesis. Who's General Nemesis, Kim?
Dana, the U.S. champ.
Right? And the runner-up.
And runner-up of Worlds, yeah.
Of Worlds. And his question was around the timing of Villainous Pact and when the non-villain character that is permitted to block must be selected. So can you pull up Villainous Pact, Cam? I think we should just read the exact text on that.
Not the global, the actual text.
The actual text.
Okay. Villainous Pact. Your opponent chooses one non-villain character die. All other non-villain character dice cannot block this turn.
Okay. So the question that General Nemesis asked was, does the selection of the non-villain character die that is permitted to be blocked happen when Villainous Pact is played or during the attack step? And this is important because in General Nemesis, aka Dana's case, this is going to affect how his Villainous Pact is going to play out when he's pushing forward with all of his Master Mold and Sentinel tokens. Right? Mm-hmm. So he said, for example, if my opponent has no active characters when I play Villainous Pact, but they are able to field a character by, say, the Collector Global, which says pay a mask, field a sidekick from your use pile, or the Mr. Sinister Global, which says pay 2 generic, field a sidekick and prep a sidekick from your use pile, is that sidekick die permitted to block in the subsequent attack step? So the answer was that the The opponent would choose one non-villain character die when the action die ability is used. If there are no opposing non-villain character dice when you use Villainous Pact, then that would resolve that portion of the ability and nothing would happen. So you can't pick anything that doesn't exist. The second sentence of the Villainous Pact is a persistent effect. So any non-villain character dice that come into play after the action die is used would still be prevented from blocking. So your opponent can't choose one of those dice because the portion of the ability has been resolved. You can use Villainous Pact in the attack step, but it would not prevent any non-villain character dice from blocking because blockers would have already been declared. Right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, and he said also if you used Villainous Pact in the main step and no opposing non-villain character dice were available, but then you pass priority and your opponent fields a non-villain character die with a global ability like Collector or Mr. Sinister Global, that die would also not be able to block. If that was reversed, the global ability happened first and then the action die, then your opponent could choose that die to be a blocker. So that timing was really important to Dana's team, right? And this is a card that has been around a long time. And this answer was, welcomed in the community for clarifying the timing of that. And a lot of these rulings that have come out have been clarifying or reframing how things work in timing, or there's a concept you might have heard us talk about, or you've heard people say in the past about the queue.
Mm-hmm.
And queue is a fancy British word for the line, the order. So what order do things happen in? But that hadn't really been formalized. It was a concept that was talked about in the community, but it didn't exist in the rule book. Right? I think there's something in the rule book that says like you have to complete one ability before something else happens.
Right.
But there was also some folks that felt like, okay, if something should trigger, but can't trigger because it's in the middle of something else's ability and it's not an interruption, you have to wait for the end. If it's not active at that point, then that ability just fizzles and you lose out on it. Right? Then there was other exceptions to that rule. So if you think about Super Rare Wanty Epic Humanoid, it had the attune, but it also had the attune when you purchased a die, and it allowed, so whenever it happened, all attune would trigger. So my attune would trigger if I purchased a die, but then your attune would also trigger when you purchased a die, or when I purchased a die. So you could, with the ruling on Super Rare Wanty, I could purchase a die, do an attune damage to, let's say, your Wanty with 1 defense. And then in turn, even though your Wanty was KO'd, your Wanty was active when the attune went off. So that one still got to do its damage, got to take its attune damage and either deal it to a character die or your opponent. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So that was sort of like the introduction, maybe, to the concept of the queue. And now that has been formalized because somewhere here there is a question about timing with range.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So it talked about multiple, let's call it when attacks abilities, or things that trigger when attacks happen.
You talk about the Starro one?
Was it the Starro one?
Starro minions and range.
Yes, that one.
Yeah.
I feel like there was a newer one or an older one than that though. But we can, here it is. Timing questions with range. This one came out before Worlds. So this question was asked in August and was answered in beginning of August and answered at the end of August. So there was a couple of things. There's several abilities now that trigger when you attack. And some of them happen simultaneously, right? Because we know that in the rules, the abilities are simultaneous, right?
Mm-hmm.
All your dice attack together, and then you choose the order in which they resolve. That's clearly outlined in the rules. What's not clearly outlined is what happens if your opponent has something that should trigger at the end of that step, but maybe it's not active anymore. So this particular question said, assuming I can choose to use first off, it was, can I use when attacks abilities and range in the order of my choice? because there was a group of people that felt that range being a keyword should happen before when attacks abilities happen, even though they, in theory, trigger at the same time.
Yeah.
So the question was, can I resolve those orders in the ability that, in the order that I want to, right? Basically, and the answer to that was yes. It also said that you have to fully resolve one before you complete the next, right? So I can't say I want to resolve range, do 4 points of range to something and KO it. Let's say I have 3 more points of range to assign, and then decide mid-range to do a different when attacks ability, like anti-monitor KOing things, and then come back and do my last 3 points of range. Doesn't work that way. You got to finish everything as it goes forward. I get to do all of my when attacks in my order, whatever order I choose. I can do range first. I can KO dice with anti-monitor first, whatever that particular case is. However I want to do it, I can steal your Starro, steal your sidekicks with Starro. I can use my rare Spider-Man, #rare Spider-Man forever. I'll be so sad when it rotates. Public Menace to spin a character die to an energy face of my choice.
It might be a while before it rotates.
Let's not talk about it. I don't want to think about it right now. So the rules questions have sort of clarified that there is a queue, right? And that range itself, which range says when a character die with range attacks, all dice with range deal their damage to each other, right? So range 1, range 2, range 3, range X, whatever you have. So there's not only the dealing of the damage from the die with range, but there's also a simultaneous dealing of damage from any dice with range from the inactive player. So this clearly clarified how these effects happen when they're simultaneous. And even if, let's say, I manage to use my range damage to KO your range person, you still get to do range back to me because they were active at the time that happened.
Right.
So this clarified a lot of things for a lot of players. I hope I explained that well.
We'll find out.
So the timing questions with range ruling is another one that I think is sort of instrumental to the next phase of how this game is going to go. Right?
Yeah.
Then there was the lab test ruling.
Which, as you can tell in Jocelyn's voice, she's not too happy.
I said nothing.
Your daughter voice said it.
So, lab test is a basic action card that came in, I think it's the Dark Phoenix Saga set. It's a 2-cost basic action, and it's continuous, and it says you may send this die to your use pile to re-roll one of your character dice in your reserve pool. To me, this seemed very straightforward, right? It said in the rulebook there are 3 different types of dice: action, character, and sidekick. And there's a few other things that the rulebook says, like dice are considered to be rolled or unrolled, and that particular sentence introduced the concept of something called an energy die, but energy die was not clearly outlined anywhere else. It does say that energy is the main resource that most things in the game use. All dice in the game, depending on which face they roll, will give you a character, an action, or provide energy. So there was some confusion. To me, this card meant that I could re-roll a character die on an energy face. And there was a group of people like myself that felt that way. And there was a group of people that said, no, the die that is on an energy face is an energy die. And you're being told to re-roll the character die, so you can't re-roll a die on an energy face. So in this particular case, they've taken this information and they're going to codify this in the next rulebook. So is what they said is that this is going to exist in the next rulebook, is that when an action, character, or sidekick die are in an unrolled game state, they're their applicable die type, and they have no facial distinction. I don't know if that means you're supposed to have like a monocle or a mustache or something. Facial distinction. If they're in a rolled game state, they function based on their facial distinction. This distinction is going to be called the die's status. The definition of status is the distinction of a die type based on what face is showing after the die has been rolled. Unrolled dice have no status and are always defined by their die type. When rolled on an action or character face, that die can apply the abilities of their card. If rolled onto an energy face, that die is an energy die that can only be used to purchase or field dice, pay a cost, or apply a specific ability based on the rolling of energy. Example would be like energize.
Mm-hmm.
Then they've referred to a table below. So if a die is in a rolled state, it has a die type, a die face, and a status. So I'm not going to read through this whole thing because it gets complex, and I would suggest you go look at the ruling. But basically, action dice have an action face or an energy face, and depending on what face they're on, depends on what the die status is. Abilities that affect the rolled character dice also include sidekick character dice unless otherwise stated, i.e. an ability that states non-sidekick character dice. So all of this just to say, lab testability. Since a die in the reserve pool is a rolled die, if a character or sidekick die is showing as an energy face, its status is an energy die, and therefore it cannot be affected by lab test. If it is showing a character face, it can.
So it doesn't matter about the die itself being a character, it's how it lands. It's the face it lands on.
If the die is in a rolled state, the face of the die matters.
Yeah, not the actual die if it's a character.
Yeah. If the die is in an unrolled state, then the die type matters. So this, I think, is probably the most change
Mm-hmm.
of all the things we've talked about today.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, this to me is a change in the fundamental way the game is played. I know some people felt that it should have been played this way all along. Some people didn't. There was dispute in the community, healthy dispute. It's now been ruled. This is the way it's going to work moving forward. So that's the way it's going to be. So it's different. And with the current rule book, I would say it is not intuitive. However, with this new rule book and the new ruling and all of this information coming down the pipeline, that should clear it up and allow us to have that clarification, teach new players how this works, and we have to accept the new way that this is being done as a community, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and there's certain other things like I can't find the ruling on this particular one right now, but there was the concept of a check. Are you rolling a die for a check versus actual an ability, right? And that came up with something about, like, if you roll a die, is it Harley Quinn? You roll a die from your use pile.
Yeah, the Harley Quinn is a roll
face,
from a use pile. Yeah.
Yeah. And if it rolls on a character face, then you do something. And if it rolls on an energy face, you do something else. So the question was around, if you rolled a die and it had energize, would energize trigger in that particular case? And the answer was no, because it was a check. So there's a few new concepts that are being introduced into the game that are going to, I think, clarify, right? And this new rule book is going to be really important. Here it is. I think it's this one. Harley Quinn Vengeance Unlimited. Yeah, so Harley Quinn reads, when KO'd, you may roll a character die from your use pile. For each energy showing on that die, deal 1 damage to target character die. If that die shows a character face, re-roll target opposing character die. Suppose the die from used rolls 2 energy. Can you choose 2 different targets to take 1 damage, or is the ability limited to 1 target that takes 2 points of damage? This is not the ruling I was looking for. However, it's important because it clarifies for each energy showing on that die, you can target 2 different character dice to deal 1 damage to each, or target 1 character die to deal 2 damage. But there was another one that talked about it being like a check, so I don't know where that one went. But regardless, there's things happening in the community. Here we go. Energize. The ruling's called Energize. So Energize says, whenever you roll this die on one of its double energy faces, you must use its Energize effect. This isn't optional. During the roll and reroll step, only check at the end of the step. The character with Energize does not need to be active for the ability to trigger. The question was, how does this interact with abilities that roll dice from the use pile? For instance, Harley's ability rolls a die from used as part of her check. This should cause energize to trigger, correct? The answer to that was no. They asked us to refer to a ruling on Domino, Not Really a Party Girl, which they've linked, that sets the precedent that an energize ability would not trigger from the use pile. Therefore, Harley's ability would not trigger the energize ability from another rolled character die. In a broader perspective, in applying energize for any ability that has a roll and check result effect, you must first check the play area in which the die is re-rolled. If the play area is a place for unrolled dice, like the use pile or the prep area, then abilities that can trigger due to the rolled result would not occur. If the play area is a place for rolled dice, like the reserve pool or the field zone, then such abilities can occur. So again, it's clarifying some of those, let's call it murky interactions of energize as it triggers anytime you roll a character die on an energy face. But this isn't about rolling a character die on an energy face. This is about checking to see, are you dealing damage or are you re-rolling a die? You with me?
Yeah. Because I'm just thinking about my orbital strike and domino.
Yeah, I hear you.
Mm-hmm.
So there's different things that can happen. There's different interactions. But I think the moral of the story, and I think I'm done talking about rules, if that's okay, Kim.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The moral of the story is the rules forum is very active. Now is the time to ask questions. If you've ever had a burning question about a card that is recently-ish modern, I don't think they're going to rule on anything from like Uncanny X-Men or Avengers versus X-Men or Justice League or anything like that. But if you have something out there that's been burning and you don't understand, or you and your play group disagree, or you disagree with the interpretation that you've heard from the Facebook group or the Discord rules chat, now would be the time to ask that question, because all of these questions help the people that are building the new rulebook clarify and reframe and hopefully streamline the rules. And then I think our job as players and advocates for this game and ambassadors to create more people playing it are to accept these rules and not to be the person that's like, well, you know, I used to be able to put the use pile at the top of my mat, but now it's at the bottom and I had to walk uphill both ways to school barefoot in the snow and get off my lawn. I think it's important that we accept the rules that are being provided to us.
It is.
And creating, particularly when new players are around and more established players are debating the finer points of the rules, it can be off-putting, particularly when there is a ruling that says, this is how it works. Whether you like it or don't like it, use pile, out of play, character die status, whether you like it or don't like it, the rule is there. So let's follow it. Let's teach people about it, and let's not confuse them by sharing them with the debates that happened in the past. And that is me getting off my soapbox now. Thanks, Kim.
All right.
Did you have anything to add to the rules soapbox?
No, I don't know. I just confused myself even more with my orbital strike and domino, so it's all good.
We can talk about that after the episode. I'll get you sorted.
All right.
So from here, Kim, I think what's next is that we're going to head over to the dice bag.
Yep. And there's nothing else you want to point out that you forgot from the rules?
No, I think we got it all.
All right.
Ask your judge and not your dad.
Yeah. Rules.
Unless your judge is your dad, and then I don't know how to answer that, but
then that's just called was it? Oh, what is it when you go to someone and you're not really supposed to, because it's like, oh man.
I don't know where you're going with this. Should we just go to the dice bag?
Well, they'll take like your side. So what's the word? It's like, forget it. No, the dice bag. All right.
Yes,
all right.
The
So
dice bag.
I think a couple episodes ago, was it episode 68? We talked about Mary Shazam, aka Mary Bromfield, right?
Yep, aka Mary Marvel.
Yep, and we had a nice long description or
Extraordinarily
backstory.
detailed.
Yes, that Gord had given us, Son of El, and Ministry of Dice, Chris. Just, looks like we have two DC comic consultants, so, there might be, some friendly rivalry going on, but, just gonna put it there.
I want all the details.
Yeah.
I want all the details from everybody, particularly about DC, because I know very little about DC unless it's been in a DC movie, which means it's been in a Batman movie or a Wonder Woman movie. And that's basically all I've seen. I've seen a Suicide Squad movie. So other than that, please bring me all of the extraordinarily detailed character breakdowns, please, from as many people as possible.
Well, we know who to go to when we have DC character.
Absolutely.
Because the DC thing is kind of confusing. The actual forum or whatever that we use, the wiki or whatever it is, it can be very confusing.
The problem is DC. The problem is not the forum. The problem is how many times DC has reinvented itself.
Things.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So, yes, we do appreciate the information. So we
may solicit some in advance next time.
Yeah, I think so. If we have a DC character, we're going to look at the wiki and then go to our consultants and then see what we can put together. Yeah. Next time we do a DC character. And in the last episode, episode 70, we talked about spoilers from the Secret Wars. So if you haven't listened to that and you would like to, go ahead if you're okay with spoilers. If not, don't listen to it if you're like me. But then again, I was there, so I had to listen to it anyways. So we talked about one particular card called God Emperor Doom. Was it Rabburn? Rabburn Alal?
Rabum Alal.
Alal, yeah. So his text had read, while God Emperor Doom is active at the start of the attack step, target character dies, attack becomes 0 until end of turn. Now, Jocelyn said
that I would target one of my own dice on my turn and one of my opponent's dice on my opponent's turn, because I read it as, I think in my head I was reading it or interpreting it as attacking die. Mm-hmm. That's not what it says. Remember, I just talked for 45 minutes about the importance of reading cards for what they say and reading the rules. It doesn't say that it's an attacking die. It just says at the beginning of the attack step. Yep. So we heard from Rob.
Zebra. Yep. Who clearly said that to us. Yes. Kim and Jocelyn. So regards with God Emperor Doom, Rabburn. Oh, it's Rabum. Is it Rabum? Rabum.
Chicken butt.
Ugh. I believe he's such into that now. Thanks to my husband. Oh my goodness. Anyways, I believe it targets any die at the beginning of each attack step. So right at the attack step, you would declare your target. It's not when you attack; it's the start of the attack step. So once you declare the attack step, then you can target a character.
You can target any die.
Yep. So you could target your own. You can target the opponent's. Which
those are all the dice you can target.
Yep. Attack 2.
They have to be active.
Yeah. And I think also Andy May said this as well, or he said the Gomper card that changes a target character die to 0 means that said character is just a shield away from being KO'd with the Arch Nemesis Global. Wasn't there a ruling about Arch Nemesis?
There was recently a ruling about Arch Nemesis.
Okay, so Arch Nemesis
was about
Global.
The actual ability, not the global.
Okay, not the global. So the global says pay a shield. Target character die has D equal to its A. So until end of turn. So pretty much what you can do is swap it, and now it becomes a 0 defense, and it's KO'd.
You're not swapping it. You're just equaling it.
Oh, equaling it, yeah.
Right. So
make it a 0, then use that,
so
and then
at the start of the attack step, you say, "Hey, I want that Master Mold token to have a 0 attack or Master Mold die." And then in the global window, you pay a shield, and you're like, "That Master Mold die has its defense equal to its offense. Oh wait, that means it's 0. Bye bye." But you probably don't want to do it to Master Mold because when it's KO'd, then it makes a Sentinel token.
Yeah, that's true.
So maybe don't do it to Master Mold.
But it's a good way to get rid of, tokens.
Other things.
It might be
Thors.
I don't know. Yeah.
Ares.
Berries. Yeah, because as soon as it hits zero defense, it's automatically KO'd. And then bye-bye.
That's right.
Yeah. So,
Andy also shared that this set is definitely going to shift the meta to make some control pieces easier to keep around because distraction is coming back. And the distraction global was most recently referred to as the static field global, which said pay a mask, target attacking character die is no longer attacking. So you can pull your own stuff back or you can push your opponent's stuff back. But he also said that the distraction action is pretty good too.
I have no idea what the distraction action actually does.
Well, that's why I just looked it up, Kim, because we are a team.
So it distraction says, action says
your opponent targets 2 of his or her characters. Those characters cannot block this turn. So pretty good. Blocking prevention.
Yeah. Anyways, he ended with Go Jays, but we won't go there in this episode.
I'm sorry.
Just in case anybody not know, I'm a big baseball fan. I am a huge Blue Jays fan, so we will not go there.
The Blue Jays didn't make it to the World Series.
No, they didn't even make it to the wild card game. All right, so another question we had asked in that episode is what cards we think that's going to show up in Secret Wars, because obviously not everything was spoiled, but we all have what we think might show up. Mr. Nick Jackalope Spam. He's definitely interested in seeing the Goddess of Thunder, which we've seen a card labeled the Goddess of Thunder. God Emperor Doom, and obviously the one that was dropped by Jimmy, and we referenced it was Sheriff Strange. Other characters you would expect is Valeria.
Nice.
Namor, which we've seen.
But not in a while.
No, like one Uncanny
X-Men?
Yeah, and that's it. Yeah. Molecule Man.
Yep.
Never even heard of him. And also a generic Thor's Corpse, which I've actually never heard of either.
Yeah, so I don't know what a generic Thor's Corpse is, and I didn't look that up yet. But Molecule Man, I know because there's a HeroClix one that's like super meta right now. It's like probably one of the strongest control pieces in the HeroClix game. And it came out in the Fantastic Four Future Foundation set. So that's pretty cool. And of course, Valeria is Invisible Woman's daughter, right? So there's a tie-in there. Yeah, Valeria and Franklin are her children.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then Namor, so the Invisible Woman is Sue Storm. I think she had a thing with Namor at some point. I don't think we covered that in our Invisible Woman episode, but at one point she became the Queen of Atlantis.
Okay.
And Namor rules Atlantis.
Yes.
So there's a thing there.
It all ties in somehow, some weird story sometimes.
I don't know why, but Marvel just seems to make more sense to me than DC. I don't know if that's just because I have more exposure to it.
Probably.
I don't know. But
and I think Nick said that you need to read more Secret Wars. Was he referring to you or me? I think he was referring to you.
That particular message was for me because I'm pretty sure you haven't finished your book report yet.
No.
I'm pretty sure you only got halfway through that trade paperback.
But I think I had one chapter left. But that didn't tell us the whole story, though.
No, it was only part of it.
Yeah.
But he did suggest to me that I should read Secret Wars so that he can spill all the tea and say why it's got Emperor Doom and Sheriff Strange. But he said they're very central to the story, so I probably don't need the why if I just read it myself.
Yeah.
And I might, because I do enjoy reading comics. I just don't always have the time or the wherewithal to do it. So I think this is the 2015 Secret Wars that we need to get caught up on. So he did say that he read all of that Hickman run of Fantastic Four in the Future Foundation, which I have been recommending on this podcast forever. Because that was really great. And then also the Future Foundation ran into Matt Fraction. So when Hickman stopped, then Matt Fraction picked it up. He said if you like the Fantastic Four, I think you'd really enjoy the Secret Wars main storyline. So I might get to it.
Yeah, maybe we'll see a lot of big on Fantastic Four and Secret Wars.
I'm so excited. So excited. Fantastic Four, Future Foundation. Give me them all. I want all the kids. I want Leech. I want Franklin. Well, we know we're going to have Franklin's Galactus, but I want like regular Franklin, and I want Valeria, and I want all the Moloids, and
yeah. I think Matt and I were discussing And if you haven't seen them, please go to our YouTube site to check out all our shorts on Secret Wars. All the covers, and one of the covers was Mr. Fantastic. Well, an evil Mr. Fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
So that would actually be cool as a flip card. You know,
There's
you
a
have good,
whole
good
yeah.
and bad. Hmm?
There's a whole thing with Mr. Fantastic. Reed Richards is his name, right? So there's like a council of Reeds. So like at some point in one of the stories, I don't know which storyline this is from, but I'm familiar with the concept of it, that he creates some sort of machine that allows him to go from reality to reality, let's say, and he finds all of the other versions of himself. Right, this super smart guy, and they make the Council of Reeds, and they have like this big brain trust that they work together on, but they're all the same guy, just from different realities.
Yeah,
in the multiverse.
Like
It's kind of an interesting concept. I'm pretty sure Sue gets mad at him for
that. Probably. I would see that.
Yeah, because I think he's spending too much time with his council and not enough with his family.
That would be interesting. It's almost like multiple man card, except it's like multiple Reed.
Yeah. So it's interesting. There's cool stuff there. So maybe I'll try and maybe I will get another short free subscription for the Marvel Unlimited app, and then I can read the Secret Wars main storyline.
There you go. Then just cancel. It's all good.
Yeah, well, that's what I was supposed to do last time, and I kept it for a year. So,
what, you didn't read anything?
Dark Phoenix. No, I read Dark Phoenix, but it took a long time because that story was from like the 70s.
It's a little hard to get through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, comics were challenging. So that is
our dice bag. It looks like
our dice bag. Yeah, I think so. Do you have any thoughts, Kim, aside from like a flip card of Mr. Fantastic that you'd like to see in Secret Wars?
No, because I really don't know much of Secret Wars or the characters or anything like that. So to be honest with you, I couldn't even think of anything.
Okay.
Maybe Gambit will show up. I don't know.
Well, we just got a Gambit, so
maybe he'll show up again. I don't know.
Maybe. I don't know if Gambit's in the Secret Wars. So.
I don't think so. I don't know.
But maybe I'll read it and then we can find out.
Yeah.
Who knows?
But yeah, I don't know much about characters. Like, as you can see, I never even heard of Molecule Man. So
I don't know how big Molecule Man is in like the greater Marvel universe. Maybe he is. I don't know. So.
No. Well, you know me. I don't look at spoilers. So unless I accidentally hear it, but.
Or unless you accidentally reveal it.
Yeah, that too. But yeah.
I think though that's a good call out, Kim, about the YouTube, because we, aka Jordo, has done a fantastic job with these shorts. So if you haven't seen them, head over to youtube.com/dmNorthTV and check out all the shorts that we've been posting. We've been posting one a day.
Mm-hmm.
And what we've done is found the source art for the spoilers that we've seen so far and then imposed it onto the card. It's really neat with some super awesome music behind it. And we'd love it if you hit like on all those videos to help us get the word out about how awesome Dice Masters is and the excitement of Secret Wars coming down the pipeline.
Yep, I think he did one for every spoiled card, and there's one more left to be released.
Which will probably be released by the time this episode comes out.
Yes.
So, okay. So before we go to the outro, Kim, what's happening in the wild world of online and in-person Dice Masters?
Mm-hmm. Well, we're playing in person now.
We are.
Every Thursday night.
Mostly.
Majority.
Except for last week when it was parent-teacher night.
Yeah. That was weird. Not weird. That was like interesting with the whole ice cream truck, but I won't even get it. Nothing to do with open house. But no, it was good. Because with being COVID, nobody's actually been into the school. So I think a lot of parents who haven't been like seen the school I think it was good, right? To be in the school and see it and stuff like that. So it was good. Yes, but that did not happen. But we are doing it this week.
We are.
Yeah.
And next week. So. And the week after that.
Mm-hmm.
All of the weeks.
So that's good. We're back to playing that. And Weekly Dice Arena is still happening every Tuesday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern. Check out the channel in the Discord for your themes and upcoming themes. We have also been, posting all the videos on that on YouTube from the past games, as well as doing some articles on it as well. So Jocelyn will get to all those places that you can see that.
I will.
Yep. And upcoming tournament, our friends at the Ministry of Dice, Chris and Andy, are putting on again the Dice Masters versus Cancer tournament, which will be happening on Saturday, November 19th. So it's a 1-day online tournament. You do have to donate to enter to play.
That's right.
And then he also, if you donate a little bit more, I think it's £5, you also be entered into the bonus raffle, which is answering, because he always does these funny quotes that, makes you go figure out what they're from or where they're from.
Pop culture references.
So if you do that, there's also a bonus there as well. And of course, more money, the better, because we are fighting cancer.
That's right. F cancer.
So sorry, did I get that? Yeah, Saturday 19th of November. So you can head over to britroller6.com and for all the details. It is a modern build, but there are cards that are banned from the top 8 world teams. So all the top 8 teams, all the cards on those teams are banned. The list is on that website as well. It's actually shorter than I thought.
I was going to say it's a shorter list than you thought, because there was, the top 8 teams were at Worlds were almost primarily
identical.
Master Mold.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there was a Barry and maybe one other team that made the top cut at Worlds. But regardless, a lot of them use the same support pieces. So I do know that listening to the most recent episode of the Ministry of Dice, that Andy in particular was a little perturbed that all 3 versions of Dark Phoenix were on one of the teams. So someone used the common, someone used the rare, and someone used the uncommon. So there's no Dark Phoenix Global available for this format.
There's other ways.
Maybe. There are other ways. There are always other ways. You just have to plan for it. There's also no Master Mold available. And no Barry Allen. So
there is Master Mold, but not the special one.
Not the super rare. So it's an interesting concept, interesting build. I like the idea of limiting those cards, but it is going to remove a lot of support cards and things that create consistency in your bag control and your board state. So it's going to be really interesting.
And the biggest thing that is really cool about this is he kind of gives, if you want extra tickets, extra bonus tickets, he gives things that you can put on your team to get extra bonus. So you kind of make your team to fully get yourself all these tickets. So it's quite fun to actually build based on his criterias.
Yeah,
because you're trying to build the best you can to get the most tickets you can out of your team.
Yeah, because I think is any of the prizing done like top and bottom, or is it all by raffle?
It's all by raffle.
Yeah, so the more tickets you get, the more chances you have to win prizes.
Yeah.
And you can get tickets by winning your games, but you can also get them by, coming up with these weird build challenges.
Yeah.
And doing other things like that. Or like you said, Kim, there's the extra raffle tickets for completing the pop culture raffle, right? Or the pop culture quiz and things like that. So there's lots of different ways to get tickets. It's a lot of fun. Everyone plays for the whole time, and it's just Swiss rounds, and then they tally it all up, and you get the bragging rights and the raffle tickets and the awesome prizes that they've pulled together. So which are to be determined.
They have a couple that have popped on their site. Stu's cards. So go check them out that he's donated, and our very own Dana's donated a prize as well. So
nice.
Yep. So we'll link that, and you guys can take a look. And I will be there. I believe I'm open that day already, so I'll be there, and I hope I'll see you there.
Awesome. And there's no Dice Social this month, Kim?
There is. How can I completely forget, because we're in October?
That's right.
Yes, Dice Social is happening on, I believe I put it, Saturday the 29th.
Okay, at the end of the month.
Yes. And of course, since it's closest to Halloween, we are doing a Halloween theme. So the theme is already there. I have not put it on the website yet. Thank you for the reminder because I completely forgot. So we'll get that up on the website, but the theme is out. So if you do go to our Dice Social channel and type in .format, you'll see it there.
Okay. And then just for the last sort of in-person Dice Masters thing, if you happen to be in the Toronto area on the Sunday, October 23rd, yes, at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, come on over to Game Time Collectibles in Mississauga, where we are holding a charity Tomb of Annihilation draft. So our store owner, Will, has very kindly been able to pick up and is donating a couple of displays of Tomb of Annihilation so that we can do a draft. It's pay what you can, and all the money is going to the Mississauga Food Bank for the October food drive. So all of the money that you donate, it's pay what you can, like we said. So you just go ahead and pay what you can, and we'll do a couple of drafts, and we'll be out there drafting and playing with some Tomb of Annihilation. So it'll be a real throwback.
Yeah, a real throwback.
Well,
I don't think I remember anything on that.
Super rare Wanty. Common Wanty.
Still looking for that though?
I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, so this is something that our store does every year. He spends the whole month of October focused on raising funds and donations for the food bank locally to support those that need it. So I think it's a fantastic venture that he does, and we're super glad that he's doing that, and we're really glad that we're going to be able to draft some Tomb of Annihilation. So if you're here, come on out. We are capping it at 16 players because that's the number of draft packs we have. But right now I think there's still some room. I think we only have 5 or 6 people registered. So if you happen to be down here or can make your way up, you're welcome. So and I think that is all of our current events right now. So on that note, if you would like to provide us feedback or, provide some thoughts and suggestions that don't have to be read on the podcast, we don't read everything. So you can just let us know you don't want us to read it. We can just correspond by email or all of the different places. You can reach out to us, and you can find us at DDPodcast at dm-north.com. You can find us on all of the socials, which include Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. The TikTok is a thing now at dmNorthTV. You can find us on our website, dm-north.com. You can leave a comment on our episode post there. And then you can find us on YouTube, youtube.com/dmNorthTV. And on Twitch, twitch.tv/dmNorthTV. You can also at both Kim and I on Discord. Kim is at SuperK and I am at JoceStitch, JoCE Stitch, and join our dmNorthTV Discord channel where we're having lots of awesome conversations about Dice Masters. So until next time, on a double and dice.